Okay, so we're going to turn the tables a little bit. I've asked you guys a bunch of questions. This is your chance to ask me anything you want.
I got an easy one for you. Ric 2032, what are you doing?
2032 is in 10 years. So I'm 73. I'm 63 right now, 73. I am definitely working out a lot. I'm still going to Orange Theory.
Biking.
I'm boring. I'm
biking.
predictable.
Are you still biking?
I'm biking. I'm traveling the world. My wife is alive. My kids are doing great. Yeah, I'm doing what I'm doing now, only more of it. Okay. Because you know what, guys? I just went to my brother Carlos, my sister Mimi, and my other sister Tiquida. So first of all, it's Carlos Alberto, Ana Maria, and Margarita Eugenia. And for the fun of it, at the party, I'm the one that did the speech. I called them that because I've never called them that before, because everybody in Latin America has a nickname. So my brother was El Gordo, because he was a chubby little kid. My sister Margarita was, I'm the baby, but before I came, she was the baby. And so they used to try to call her La Chiquitilla, but my sister Mimi, who was only 2 years older, couldn't say Chiquitilla, it would come out Tiquida. So she's Tiquida for life. And then my sister Ana Maria is Mimi. And
who are you?
El Gringo, for some of my friends. And I used to have a beard, so they called me Forro de Mono.
Forro de Mono.
monkey skin, because I was hairy-ish. And those were the two main, nicknames that I inherited. But where I was going is that there's like two kinds of 70s these days. There's the 70s that grew up in the 60s and rock and roll, like Jeff, and are very, very active. My siblings all fall into that category. And then there's those like 70-year-olds that look like they didn't live in the 60s. They just like lived two 50s and jumped into the 70s. And they're old and they're boring and they're kind of stupid and they don't travel the world, So I'm for sure not that guy.
Right.
I'm going to be active till I can't be active anymore. And honestly, I would rather be dead than be inactive.
Dependent on people.
So that's what I think about, 2023. And hopefully still good looking like I am right now.
You have to bring the makeup artist back then quite a bit.
Yeah, she was quite helpful.
Ric's feeling pretty good about how he's looking right now.
Next question.
I have a question for you.
Right.
So when you arrived in Silicon Valley, when was that, 80s?
1980.
1980. What did you think that the future of Silicon Valley would look like 10, 20 years from then?
Okay.
Did you think it was going to stay as it was?
Okay, so I grew up
Yeah.
in Guatemala for the first 6 years of my life, Los Angeles Inglewood for the next 11 years of my life, and I moved to Guatemala between the ages of 17 and 21 for about 3.5 or 4 years. Yeah. And my brothers and sisters were all older than me. So my brother Carlos had his master's in public administration, and his first real job after college, maybe second real job, was working for the city of Sunnyvale. So I'm living in Guatemala. He's the first guy in our family to leave LA, go somewhere else. And he said, when you're ready to move back to the States, since you like computers, come here. This is the Mecca. I had no fucking idea what he was talking about. And he lived in Sunnyvale. And I thought Sunnyvale must be this really boring Sunnyvale town, right?
Resort.
And like I didn't want to come. I wanted to go to LA and fuck around with my loser friends that I had down there. I think most of them are in jail, to tell you the truth. So he did me the biggest favor ever by getting a job here and letting me crash on his couch. And I came here, Apple was the talk of the town and Atari. So everybody wanted to work at Atari to write games. Right. And everybody wanted to work at Apple because they had just gone public. And in those days, it was Wozniak as much as Jobs, right? It was really Jobs and Wozniak were the thing. And then you had like Amdahl and Intel and kind of those standard, and a ton of computer companies. So the other thing that's happened is that, the big computer companies were IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and DEC. and then a bunch of Me Too's. And North First Street had like 30 Me Too computer manufacturers that made what they called mini computers. Pyramid Technology, I worked for Plexus, and just a whole bunch of them. So computer companies were a big thing here. And I got a job at a software company, my first job, software company, second job, and then a computer company called Plexus was my third job. And I was just blown away at, I only worked at startups, and all of them went belly up, right? Every startup I worked at did not go
Was
well.
it because of you or the business?
Could have been. Actually, then I worked at Plexus, and that one went belly up as well. And then I got the gig at Apple, and by then I had learned Unix. Unix was a new thing, and I know I'm like a nerd, but you can't tell because I'm in a cool guy's body.
You're a pretty cool
right?
dude. Yep.
But I'm a nerd in a cool guy's body.
It's the makeup.
Is who I am.
It's the makeup
And
again.
the Unix thing, I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. I had never seen an environment like that was so rich for a programmer. Because before that, you had these little things where you could kind of, load, store, whatever. And this thing was just like 7 volumes of documentation and you had to read the manuals because it was the only way to learn
So
it.
before Unix, was it IBM mainframe?
I worked
VM?
on some mini computers that were assembler language, and then I worked on a mini that was Pascal, and I did some Fortran programming as well, but mostly assembler. And then Unix and C starting in 1984. When I went to Apple, I was a Unix programmer. They were trying to make Apple POSIX compliant, which was a standard operating system where the library calls could be called by any language, I guess, et cetera, and work. And they needed to be POSIX compliant to sell things to the military. And I think what was really going on is we put AUX, it was called Apple Unix, on the Mac, but people didn't use it. They just did it to buy the equipment because it was POSIX compliant. Then they would just reformat the disk and load Apple
It's hard
OS
to believe
on it.
that Apple stock at one time sold for 7 cents. I mean,
That'd be fun.
it was.
If I could go back, I could just buy the stock,
and the
go to
early
sleep,
80s,
Just by Apple, that's enough.
and never work again.
Buy 7 cents a share and sit on the
Oh
stock.
my God, can you imagine?
Sell
I
some
would
books,
just make
yeah.
every call.
Yeah.
I could have predicted that Mike Tyson would get knocked out by that guy. He was like 100-to-1 odds. I could predict all these things. Oh well, maybe Elon Musk will.
He'll figure it out.
Figure it
Musk
out
will
for us.
figure it out.
But anyway, so I started Talos with Alexis Tatarsky. I met him at Apple, and he was a very business-minded guy. And we said, we could start a company doing Unix-based consulting projects. And there's so much Unix going on, and we believed it was the future, and we were right. We just kind of inherently knew that this was going to beat mainframe technology and other proprietary technology like DEC-VAX, HP, whatever the hell it was called.
And DEC-VAX was all over the place.
DECs
they
were
were
everywhere.
huge.
Yeah, and they were
used them.
expensive.
Huge.
And they were
Very
expensive.
expensive.
But now you had Sun coming on, Silicon Graphics coming on. So we launched Taos, and I swear to God, November of '89, by April of 1990, we're profitable because it was just the two of us. And by 1992, we've got like 60 employees or something. And then in 1993, we woke up one day, we were like 100 people. And I thought, shit, 60 are at Sun and 40 are at Silicon Graphics. I better do something about this.
I think Rick
was
had
concentrated.
more people that knew Solaris than Sun did at the time.
Yeah,
It
we
was
got
crazy.
hired by Sun, so Sun went from Sun OS
Yeah.
to Solaris.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was a rewrite because that was BSD to AT&T. And Sun calls us and says, can you guys teach our people the differences between Sun OS and Solaris? And we said it would be our pleasure. And so we went from engineering to IT because of that, because we had to mostly train IT people. Yeah, the engineers already had that shit figured out, right? And so we became kind of the sysadmin company that had programmers, right? That was the differentiator. We didn't have cookbook administrators. We had all these guys that were born from our engineering days. Right. So we were already doing DevOps. So like I remember somebody said, "Oh my God, this DevOps thing is a big deal," and I was like, "Fuck, I've been doing that shit since 1990." Yes, whatever you want to call it.
The best Unix programmers were the lazy ones because they would write code and write themselves out of a job. They didn't want to.
Yeah.
They didn't want to do all that
You
stuff.
automate yourself out of.
They would automate the boring stuff, and they were great because they would just automate the hell out of things.
I mean, if you think about the stuff we were doing at Sun in 1994, that just comes now. That you just plug the damn thing in and it's already running. But you used to have to set up the sub networks, the DHCP stuff. You have to set all this shit up. It was not trivial. And if you wanted me to move you, you're an engineer, and you said I'm going from building 6 to building 1, that took 2 days. Now you just move your laptop and go.
So we talk about all this stuff. When Taos had their 25th year anniversary in the Mountain View Technology Museum.
Yeah, you were there.
I was there.
I grabbed.
You were in crutches or something.
Yeah. I'm a horrible snowboarder.
Yeah.
I grabbed a couple of the young Taos engineers and we walked in the museum part. And I realized I probably worked on 70% of the stuff that was in the museum. I'm just like, oh my God, and they're laughing,
Hey,
they're
that's my
cracking
old
up.
terminal.
It's like, oh my God,
You
that's
have to admit-
ancient.
you have
This
to
is
admit-
ancient. I'm like, oh, geez, yeah, it's true, it's ancient.
It's like the thing about the Y2K. That's when old guys got their jobs, right? Because they needed COBOL programmers. So the joke is
Review all the software.
the joke is this, right? So this guy doesn't want to deal with Y2K because he knows he's going to get called for all these jobs. So he decides to freeze himself in what do you call those things? Those cryo chambers, and go to sleep for like a few years. And he sets it to wake him up like in 2004, and by then Y2K will have gone, and he can go back to being a Unix programmer or whatever. And just for the hell of it, he leaves his resume on his chest in case he dies. People know who he was. So, he wakes up and there's all these scientists looking at him, and he goes, "Is it 2004? And they go, "No, it's 2,999, and we're super excited to welcome you because we see that you've got COBOL on your resume."
It's been 1,000 years, huh? Another one.
Next question.
Rick, are you biking this summer? Are you doing your 100 miles bike?
I bailed.
You bailed.
I bailed, but for good reason. I'm going to Poland.
Oh, that's the reason.
I'm
okay.
going to a wedding. I'm taking chess lessons from a grandmaster. Her name is Anna Warakomska, and she lives in Holland with her husband, Maurice, who's also a grandmaster. They have a baby together, but she's getting married in Poland, and I've gotten to know her pretty well. And I said, "Sure, I'll come to your wedding." And so I haven't been anywhere since COVID other than local, U.S. travel. So I called Rufus and I said, "Listen, I'm not doing the Pan Mass, but I'm going to give you $10,000 for, donation." He was very happy. So he's happy I'm not riding because he got 10,000. Rather than me fundraising 10 grand, he fundraised 10 grand.
We should then organize a 100-mile ride somewhere.
Oh, and I wanted to say, this guy, Half Sneakers Will Travel, he runs ultra marathons. Okay, so we'll just say that real quick before we go, and you can throw it in there somewhere. And what's worse is he listens to audio tapes.
Yeah, now they're called podcasts, but yeah.
Oh my
Books.
God, that is the worst thing I could imagine, is running 100 miles listening to some guy talking.
You need to
in my
listen
fucking
to
ear.
heavy metal or something.
He's a genius. He's a genius. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, I do these ultras, the mountain ultra running, and it's funny. It's almost like I think it's like startup. You start these races and you feel so fresh and confident, and you've carbo loaded the night before. It's like when you start a company, right? You've taken a vacation or you come from a cozy job, you think you're gonna eat the world. And then you start running in these mountains, right? You go up mountains through the night and everything goes wrong. Like literally you have to, always problem solve. You have blisters, this old injury on your foot that you forgot you had, it shows up. And it's the same in a startup, right? You envision this beautiful lifestyle. And then every day you just gotta grind through things, right? And you gotta problem solve. And the only way that keeps you from not quitting a 100-mile race in the mountains is, one, envisioning the end, whatever the end is, like drinking a beer or eating a watermelon. Same in a startup, right? You got to envision there. It's problem solving. Like, you have to take care of yourself. If you sit on a rock, those miles don't run itself. It's same in a startup. You take a vacation, nothing.
You're
goes,
done.
Nothing.
You're
you
done.
know.
Yeah.
And then living in the moment, right? You cannot daydream. Like, you gotta grind it. You gotta just be present and walk those hills if you have to walk. Same in a startup. So I think sometimes when I'm running in the mountains, I equate all the learnings from running
that's
to a
good way to
startup
look
thing,
at it.
and you just got to be present and go for it.
So
way to look
going
at it.
wrong, and then we'll be done. You told me that you ran a race here locally, and what happened? You guys all had to run extra because you missed the turn sign.
Oh no, that was Cuyamaca down in San Diego. Yes, so this is a 100-mile race in the Cuyamaca region, which is a high altitude desert, and there's mountains. So you're in mile 90, I think it was 97, and
3 miles to go.
You're super excited, right? You're smelling the bar, and you're like, I'm I'm gonna sit down, and we were up in a mountain, which, okay, that's downhill, I remember, it's downhill, and we did the right turn, the marking, and I go down the mountain, and then all of a sudden I see the first guys coming up. It's like, what's going on? And they said, oh, some vandals moved the signal, so now we have to climb back the mountain.
How many extra miles?
I don't know, it was too many.
many
The
steps did
miles
you
are
get
fine,
that
but
day?
it's like you want to cry. It's like, you're kidding.
How many steps? You get 20,000, 200,000, 250,000.
But yeah, it was a very sad ending because you're like, oh my God, it's the mental thing, right? Once you are so close, but
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. It was great. Well done. That was a lot of fun. Okay. Yeah, and audience.
Thank you.
Audience. Thank you very much. It's been
fun.
a lot of fun.
Thanks, Joe.
Wish we were all here in person.
Well,
Amen.
out of 8 hours of tape, we'll probably have 5.